Welcome to the Reticle Up podcast, where I, Threega Kenzie, will be interviewing competitive shooters, hunters, fishermen, archers, entrepreneurs, and outdoorsmen. Come learn with me as I interview people from all walks of life, in different disciplines, all across the world, from novices to professionals of all ages. No matter what, everyone has something they can teach you, so come join me on the journey. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm venturing off into a new kind of arena for me. So I have Thomas Ray on today. He is a student angler, so he's going to tell me a lot more about fishing than I know. So how are you, Thomas?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Heck yeah. So actually, I want to know, I don't know, how old are you? Curious.
I'm 16.
16. Okay, cool.
I
So
turned 16 a few days ago.
happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
That's awesome. So how did you get into fishing? Like, who taught you?
Well, I wasn't really into it until I was about, I'd say, 12 years old. And at first, really all I wanted to do was play video games. And one day, my neighbor and my papa invited me to go on a trout fishing trip with them on Cumberland River.
Oh.
And since then, I've been addicted to it almost.
Yep.
I go just about every single weekend, and I have for the last 4 years.
Wow. And I'm assuming that's like on boats, on shorelines, like off piers, all of it.
Anywhere. Kayaks, shorelines, boats, you can think of.
That's so cool. For kayaks too, do you do like the sit on kayaks when you fish?
Yes.
Okay.
And mine, I got a Jackson Cruise. Mine, I can actually stand up in it and fish.
Neat.
If the water's flat enough.
Yeah. Not like choppy. Okay, that makes sense. I used to surf back in my day, so I know a little bit on like the stand-up paddleboard side. Okay, so
it can be hairy.
Yeah.
It can be hairy.
Yeah. So when you were 12, like you said, your grandpa like actually taught you. Like, who taught you to, I don't know, cast a line, bait your fish, or hook, all of that?
I guess I actually learned how to cast whenever I was little. My dad taught me just in a farm pond, worm and bobber. But after that, I started learning different casts on my own, watching YouTube videos, all that. It takes a certain amount of time to learn a skill of casting. So there's different casts you can do, but simple ones, it only takes a few minutes to even learn one.
That's cool. So you can outfish your.
Pretty much. Pretty much. If he's listening, he'll probably laugh at me a little bit, but pretty much.
So for those that don't know, so his dad, Ryan Ray, he's a competitive shooter. So that's how I met his son here. But out of you two, I'm curious, who's like more competitive in general?
Him.
Really?
Lifting weights, it's him. If I go down and lift weights, he immediately goes down and lifts 100 pounds more than me. just to show off. It's definitely him.
I like this. Okay, it's good to know. So what was that feeling like? Do you remember that first fish that you ever reeled in, like truly yourself? Do you remember that feeling that you had?
The first one I remember vividly, it was on that trip to Cumberland River. I was in my kayak. I was floating down the river, and I was alone. I didn't see the main boat I was with. I didn't see him at all. And fish around with log. I catch about a 15-inch trout, and I get him into my kayak, and I had no clue what to do with him. He's sitting there in between my legs. I'm holding it down, trying not to freak out. At this point, I have no clue how to get a hook out of a fish, and it's just flopping around, ends up dying. And finally, the boat we were with, they came over to me, and it was small enough to keep, because there's a slot limit that you can't keep any from 15 to 20 inches on. And it was small enough to keep. And that was the first fish I truly remember catching. And it's basically burned into my brain. I'm like, I probably could save that fish, but I had no clue what I was doing. So I felt bad for it. Yeah. But I remember it was like, Huh. Well, me being an idiot, I just killed fish I didn't really want to kill, but I'll eat them anyway.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. So who left you alone to your own devices, like with no knowledge of what to do?
Probably my neighbor. He we go fishing a lot during the summer and sometimes during the spring, and he's a real outdoorsman. And he thought that if I needed to learn something, I needed to learn it on my own. So they sat me out there in a kayak. 12-year-old me, they sat me in a kayak in the middle of a river, a not a small river, a big river, and I'm just floating down the river and end up catching one. I had no clue what to do with it.
That's really funny.
But it did teach me a lot of how I need to unhook them, and on that trip, I actually learned how to unhook one later. So
that's awesome. I bet that was the day you learned.
Even though it was a trial and error, I still figured it out.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember my friend and I, we went, I'm not going to name her. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. We went bluegill fishing, and she squirms at fish. So she wouldn't take it off the hook herself. She wouldn't bait the hook herself, right? I straight up told her, though, I was like, listen, if you're not mature enough or able to hook your own fish and take it off, right? Because it's the humane thing to do, then you can't come. And if you're not going to bait your own hook, you can't come. And then what does she end up doing? Catching a damn fish. And then guess who has to take it off? Me. Like, that's not how you do it. I teach you once, and then you do the rest of the time. I'm not doing it. That's your job. At least I show you how to do it the first time. After that's on you.
Yeah. After that, I had a few months of a learning curve of what do I even do, but after that, it was almost muscle memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you're lucky too that our generation has YouTube. Before that, they didn't. What did they do? It was passed down.
I definitely had to learn a lot on my own because neither my dad or my papa were too big of fishermen, but YouTube helped a lot, and just experience on the water helped a lot. Absolutely. Even though videos can teach you however many topics and things you want, there's nothing that replaces actually being out there and doing it yourself.
You are a smart 16-year-old. So that's right. So are you mostly saltwater, or are you freshwater angler?
Mainly just freshwater. I've done a little bit of saltwater, but it's not anything to write home about. Caught a couple tiny grouper, and that's it.
Yeah.
For the most part, being in a landlocked state, there's no saltwater. And
yeah. What's the farthest you've actually traveled to fish?
This summer and the summer before that, I went up to Lake Erie and walleye fished. Before that, it was probably down to Florida.
Okay.
Mostly along just the East Coast.
Okay.
That's it.
No, that's awesome. I experienced the same thing. So again, surfing, Kenzie, moved to a landlocked for college, and what do? You kind of lose that, which kind of sucks, but you make do with what you have.
Yeah.
So what's your absolute favorite fish to wrangle?
Definitely smallmouth bass. They fight like hell. They never give up. And usually they're in the prettiest places you can even find. Little small creeks, even on big lakes, are just fun.
That's awesome. What about your favorite to eat?
Probably walleye. Out of every single fish I've eaten, walleye still tastes the best.
Okay.
Nothing can replace them.
So have you tried my thing is like flounder and grouper. I don't know why I love flounder. So
I haven't eaten any saltwater fish.
Yeah.
All mainly just freshwater.
Yeah.
Catfish are okay. Crappie are in the middle of catfish and walleye, and then trout are on the end of that.
Yeah.
They're bony, but they're still fun to catch, and they're easy to clean.
Yeah.
They're really easy to clean.
Part. Yep. Question on a side note. I didn't actually prepare you for this, but do you hunt as well?
I've hunted a little bit, but it's not really my thing. My brother, younger than me, he loves hunting,
Mhm.
but I just like seeing them swim away.
Mhm.
I don't like killing things if it doesn't need to be killed. So
Yeah.
I'd rather just, I'd rather see them say, "Oh, that's cool," and then let them go on their merry way.
I was curious where the meat comes from your family. So we do have the hunters. I like it. I like it. Okay. So for those that don't know, think about like newbies listen, especially me a little bit. But there's a lot that goes into fishing that's more than just rod, reel, bait, right? So
Hmm.
what are some things that like goes into fishing that like most people don't even realize or don't think about?
A lot of it has to do with finding spots, finding finding out what the fish are eating, where they're going to be that time of year, and what bait to throw at them to have the best success.
Mhm.
Not every time you can go out and catch them on one certain bait on one certain spot because they're not always going to be there.
Huh.
As the seasons change, they're going to move either deeper or shallower or do different things, eat different things. It all relates to weather and timing and mainly time of year.
How do you learn all that?
Experience. It YouTube videos some, but mainly just experience. It's gotten a lot. I will say it's gotten a lot easier catching numbers of fish and catching bigger fish as I've gone through this journey of 4 years. But at the beginning, I hadn't even caught a bass over 3 pounds.
Oh wow.
Now it's almost every single time I go. Like
Wow.
I went Sunday, caught a 4.5 pounder. I mean, it gets better with time.
Cool.
It won't happen every time, but
But a bad
if you
day
can figure out
fishing. What's the saying?
a bad day of fishing is better than a good day of work,
That, yes.
and I will 100% agree with that. Practicing electrician for my dad.
Wow.
I
Okay.
say practicing lightly because work 3 days a week during the summer
Yep.
and mainly just hang temporary lights, but that's about it.
That's cool though. I worked for my mom growing up too, so I was in the same boat. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, it's good though. So you have school, fishing, and work. I like. Good job.
Hmm. Thank you.
So on the fishing spots too, I wanted to ask: do you mostly go to like public land or do you have private land? And like, how do you find out? How does someone new find out where they can actually go and fish legally?
Well, I've got a lot of private land that I fish. I've got a few connections that I've managed through the last 4 years that I've been able to fortunately get that I've got about 8 ponds and a creek in about a 4 mile radius.
Cool.
So it's basically a stomping ground of just massive fish.
Yeah.
But apart from that, there's a lot of public creeks and a lot of public lakes that have excellent fishing.
Mhm.
One really good tool is either the app Onyx Hunt
Yep.
or Google Maps. Onyx Hunt, you can actually figure out who owns the property and be able to contact them. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
pretty
I,
sure it
I use
allows
that.
you, but you can find property that way. And then Google Maps, if you want to fish creeks, you can find the creek, find a bridge, and then figure out if the bridge is on public land or private land. And usually you can just park over by the bridge and walk down and fish down around there.
That's awesome. Back home, we have a pier, fishing pier, and of course saltwater. But my friend
Hmm.
spent many a time out there, and he's now making rods. But it was like pier trash. I don't know, is what they call
Huh,
them. Pier rats. That's what it was. Yes.
pure rat.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got off track there. But so going back to like for the gear, I guess the setup, not rod, reel, bait,
Hmm.
obviously. What are some bare minimum tools that someone needs to get started?
Really, all you need is a rod, reel, line, and whatever baits you think need that you need to throw. Now, there's a few different rods, a few different styles of rods you can get. Of course, there's push buttons and there's a bunch, but the two main ones I use are a spinning rod, which put the bail, you can throw the line out. They're relatively easy to fish, actually really easy to fish, and almost any beginner can pick one up, throw it, they'll be perfectly fine. I usually use them for smaller baits that don't weigh as much and for smaller techniques that I don't have to use as much power for. And then the one I use the most is bait caster. And you can horse fish in a lot faster. You can fish a lot heavier baits. They're just all around easier to use, for me at least.
Yeah.
For beginners, not so much. But after you get a little bit of time under your belt, it'll just be muscle memory. You won't even think that you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay, question on the rod too. Is it like archery in the fact that like you get a pole set up for you, whether grip or size or length, or no?
Well, there's so many different rod companies out there. You can get custom rods, but there's even with spinning and casting rods, there's different sizes, there's different lengths, everything. And it all matters in a sense, because a rod that I would throw that bait on, I wouldn't throw something like this on, because it wouldn't handle something that big.
Oh, okay.
They all just correlate with sizes.
Okay.
And it takes a little time getting to figure out what size rod you want for what bait you want, but after a little trial and error, it doesn't take too long.
And there's different like weight for all of the fishing line out there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You can go all the way down to 2-pound line if you possess yourself, or I even have a rod over there that's got 65-pound line on it.
Holy cow!
It's anything you want. Just depends on what type of fishing you're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what growing up, we used to do like the ling and the shark, and my grandpa used to do sailfish, but we'd be out in the Gulf of Mexico past Louisiana, and ling was so good. But yeah, we did a lot of red snapper, like big red snapper. So I'm only experienced in saltwater, but I'm interested in freshwater because I live in Tennessee now, and it is creek and lake.
That's about the epicenter of creek fishing.
Yes, and like fly fishing, which I want to ask you about too, but I got to get into all of this.
I'll get to it later.
So for the tools though, I have another question. Maybe this is stupid. Do they need like, obviously spare parts, like a tackle box? What about like removing the hook, like getting good pliers, or like simple things? Like what do they need?
Just a little simple pair of pliers works perfect.
Yep.
You don't need anything too fancy. Just a little simple pair of pliers. If you've got a bait that has treble hooks on it, you'll probably need pliers, because I've had one in my finger and it's not pleasant whatsoever.
Yep, you learned that the hard way.
I learned it the extreme hard way.
Oh, and I had a question on bait too. So I've used worms and stuff, and we've used like bits and pieces of fish cut up, but do you mostly use real live bait or whatever it's called?
I usually stick to artificial. For 99% of what I'm doing, it's all artificial.
Okay.
Occasionally, whenever I bluegill fish during the summer, I'll throw crickets or worms, but most of the time it's just strictly artificial.
So again, dumb. I know nothing. So when it comes to artificial, what do those look like? Like what size? Like for small mouth bass or big mouth bass or whatever. What are you using?
Well, I tend to catch myself using a certain number of baits throughout the year that I just always stick with. This is one of them. It's a Z-Man jackhammer. I have one of them over there. I've caught probably 100 fish on just this year.
Wow.
It looks like a rag doll that's been beaten across a wall. It's rough. And then for smallmouth, it's an opinion, but probably the greatest bait out there is a little simple Ned rig. It's just a stick with a hook in it. That's about it. And
it's a Ned, like N-E-D?
N-E-D.
Okay.
And
Ned.
they catch just about anything that swims.
Okay.
I've caught I've caught trout on them. I've caught catfish, bass, all three species of them. Everything eats it.
Okay, that's good to know. The other question I had, and I similarly know this experience, but nowadays is a little bit different. Like, how does someone go out and get their fishing license? What do they need to know about the different licenses that they need to pay for and all that stuff? Because that's huge. A lot of people don't know about that.
Usually, just checking on your state's wildlife website. Just like Kentucky has fish. I had to think about it I haven't had to buy a license yet, but
Okay.
when I do, I
Next time, aren't you?
just had to look. Just all you have to do is look up where to get a fishing license in your state. Figure out where it is. Usually, Walmart sells them. I think Academy sells them too, and it's a really simple process. Just go there and pay a small fee. Just sign up for a fishing license.
You don't have to take a
Doesn't take-
class. You don't have to take a class or anything.
No, you don't need a class.
Okay, so
They
it's
don't
not like
ask any
hunting.
questions. They just get a fishing license.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. I was comparing it to hunting where I had to like go and take a class. So I was curious. Yeah. Question randomly too that I had popping up. Would you ever try noodling?
No, because in all respect to everyone that noodles, you all are insane, and I don't see what possesses a human being to want to stick their hand in a mud hole in a bank and either pull out a catfish, a snapping turtle, or a snake. I don't get it. I do not understand it. I will not ever understand it. I will never stick my hand in a mud hole to try to pull a catfish out of. It's just the dumbest idea I've ever heard anyone think of. Oh, I see people do it all the time.
I
I see
know.
people do it, and I'm like, you're insane.
I
I'm
know.
sorry, you're insane.
They're like, here's my scars. I'm like, I would die. I would be the person that get the turtle and the snake all at the same time.
Here's a giant patch of catfish teeth on my right arm.
No, I was curious about that. So, all right, getting back to more serious stuff too. Can you explain how important it is to be cognizant of like conservation, right? Only fishing during season, making sure that you are fishing the right species and the right size. Like, how do you know all that and learn all of that?
Usually, again, just checking with your statewide wildlife website, you can figure out which seasons you have. Thankfully, here in Kentucky, we don't have any seasons on fish or any certain. Well, we do have trout stamps. So, the trout fish here in Kentucky, you have to buy a certain trout stamp, and that covers you for a whole year. You can trout fish as much as you want. If you don't have that trout stamp, then you cannot trout fish unless it's in small feeder creeks, or I think that's about it. But you have to have a trout stamp anywhere else you go.
Okay.
But apart from that, there's not too many states have seasons. I know the northern states have seasons on bass and muskie, but I'm not too positive about anything else.
Well, Florida, we had a lot on red snapper season for sure. Like you had a small window. So red snapper, you couldn't, but you could with white or whatever. There's a lot of differences.
Yeah.
And that's why we had to keep in like pretty good records of the day that you need to go and not go.
Yeah, there's certain days you can only fish for certain fish, but
yeah,
for the main part, anything inland and anything freshwater, unless you're up north, you're probably okay. But just make sure to check with your either a wildlife resource officer or just the website.
Yeah.
Just your state's fish and game website.
How important though is conservation?
For me, it's of my highest concern. I've been to a lot of different waterways that I just see trash floating everywhere, and I think, wow, ruined ecosystems just because somebody's too lazy to throw away their trash.
Yep.
And I also think us fishermen have something to do with that as well. Mm-hmm. Whenever we cut off line, some of us throw line in the water, and it makes me mad sometimes just because we're technically, even though we're blaming all these people for trashing up our waterways, we're the ones doing it.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets to me a little bit, but usually whenever I see trash floating, I try to pick it up. If it's warm, I'll definitely pick it up. But if it's cold, I'll think about it because I don't want to risk getting wet and staying freezing for the rest of the day.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way with hiking. Every time I hike trails, same thing. I've been picking up trash, and there's always like one water bottle out of reach. I'm like, do I risk my death?
Keep the water bottle.
Yeah, it's really painful though. I mean, yeah, we do the best we can for sure, but there's always, I can't tell you how much we pick up. I get it. Yeah.
I've caught plastic bags before. I caught a shoe one time. A couple tournaments ago, I caught a glass bottle.
Oh God.
Don't know how that happens. I caught a glass bottle. I've caught a rod before. In that same tournament that I caught the glass bottle, I caught a rod. Just the amount of trash you catch is amazing.
Yeah.
It's sad. It really is sad.
Oh, 100%.
I've caught a few fishing lures before too. Just randomly casting.
God, that's odd. Oh man. Well, I'm glad that you put conservation first though. I think that when, especially someone of your age, just the young people, when youth realize that we're setting the tone and the standards for the future and what our planet looks like, and it's really important. So I'm proud of you for that. So what can you tell me the reels? I know you kind of showed them here. So for people watching, they get the bonus. How do they operate? How do you release them, cast them, reel in a fish, all that stuff?
For spinning rod, it's real simple. All you have to do, unhook the bait, or you have your bait here, reel it up. Just reel using that hand. Flip the bail open, hold the line in one finger, and just either flip it out there or I can't make a full cast in here. I wish I could, and then your drag system operates like that. Bail spins around, the fish pulls out line, and on your way in, just reel at whatever speed you need to. That's spinning rod. It's really simple.
Yeah.
Everything about it, it's really simple. Bait caster, the reason some people have such a difficulty with it is of the line release system.
Yep.
So again, bait like that, you're gonna have to have your thumb on the first. You click down the bail release. You have to have your line or your thumb on the spool of line to make sure it doesn't backlash. You just flip it out there, and as you're flipping it or casting it, just try to keep a little bit of pressure on that line so it doesn't all explode back out of the reel and you end up throwing your lake. But it takes a little getting used to. After a while, it's not too bad. I'm casting behind me, I hit a bush, and I look at it and I'm like, that's never coming out.
Oh.
I'm going to have to cut all of that off. It can be frustrating sometimes.
Okay, so this has been like the great debate that I don't know much about. How does someone reel in a fish properly?
First, it all starts with a hook set. If you don't get a hook in that fish, you're never going to get them in the boat. Mainly, now it differs with baits, but for the most part, any of your single hook baits, like small underspin or chatterbait, you're going to want to lift as soon as you feel bite. You're going to want to set the hook into the air. Make sure your rod tip's held high. I can't really get in the frame, but you got to make sure your rod tip's held high. And try to keep them low in the water. Even though it is cool when they jump, it's mainly when you lose your majority of fish. I've lost, I don't know how many fish as they jump. Every bit of my soul. There's been some that have jumped. I'm like, yeah, that was probably my biggest bass ever.
Wow. Okay.
But mainly just want to keep, as soon as you set the hook into them, you want to keep them down in the water. Now, with anything that has more than one hook on it, like a crankbait or a jerkbait, you're going to want to lean into them more of instead of a set up motion, you're going to want to lean to the side and get the hooks into the fish without ripping it out of its mouth.
So not up, side-ish flick.
More to the instead of going like that, like you would with a single hook bait, you want to kind of rip to the side, more of a slow motion. Usually, if you're fishing a crankbait, your rod's going to have enough power to load into that fish.
Okay.
Instead of you doing most of the work.
Okay. Super cool. Question on baiting your own hook. How many knots, first of all, do you know how to tie?
Around 3.
Okay.
3 that I'm very comfortable with.
Okay.
Apart from that, it's more of a 50-50. I'll give it a shot. There's been one I've been successful at a little bit. Yeah, there's not so much. But for the most part, I mainly just use 2 knots unless I'm going down to really, really small baits. For 99% of what I do, I just tie a straight Palomar knot to my line or to my eye of the hook, and I hardly have fish break it off.
What is that?
Really, a Palomar knot?
Yeah.
So first,
if you're listening to this podcast, you need to go watch the video now on YouTube.
yeah, this will make hardly any sense without the video.
That'll be great.
First, you want to start with your line in a little loop.
Okay.
Just double it over. Then, once you get near the eye of the hook, you want to put that loop through the eye.
Oh.
And make it to where it's almost like holding in between the two.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take that eye that you made, wrap it or set it over top of the other line that you have that makes the loop, wrap it around to form that knot.
Huh.
You want to take the loop that you made, slide it over the bait. You usually want to wet it a little bit before you cinch it down, just so it doesn't burn itself on the way up. But I'll just get that process. Usually it ties. I made sure it didn't tie so that I can actually tie one later. But
cool.
You usually get the idea. That's one of them. The other one I use isn't necessarily a actual line to lure knot, but it's a line to line knot. So usually with string rods, I fish braided line, which is really thin diameter, yet you can have really heavy poundage.
Okay.
Other lines like monofilament or fluorocarbon, you kind of sacrifice a little bit of strength for visibility. Fluorocarbon is basically invisible. Braid, you can see it really easy. So for when I'm fishing a spinning rod, I take the braid line, I tie it off to a leader of usually fluorocarbon, any pound works, but that's an Alberto knot that connects those two. And that's just a little small connection knot that allows you still have sensitivity in your line, strength in your line, yet on the lure end of it, everything, fish can't see it.
Huh.
That one took me a while to get down.
That was YouTube.
That was YouTube. That was YouTube and a lot of failed attempts at getting fish on them. At first I thought, oh, I've got this down. And then I'd set the hook on fish and my whole line breaks. I'm like, what happened? I get it in and there's the little end of my braided line was still wrapped up in a knot and the leader wasn't there because I didn't tie it right.
Oh, dang. Yeah.
So it took a little bit of trial and error, but finally, it's one of the simplest leader knots that you can tie.
Pretty cool.
Doesn't take hardly any time to do it. It's pretty easy. I haven't used a bobber in a while unless it's to bluegill fish, but you're going to use a bobber if you want your bait to, usually bait like this, it'll fall to the bottom, sit at the bottom until you move the line. If you want to fish a bobber on it, it'll suspend there in front of the fish and just wait. It'll just wait. So there's a lot of people that fish for smallmouth bass on Dale Hollow Lake that use a little small jig, almost jig like this,
Yeah.
with a little bit of feather, a little bit of bird feather or something on the back of it, and they just put that underneath of a bobber, and it just suspends there. It just sits there and does nothing until you move the line, and it just keeps it off the bottom.
Yeah. That makes sense.
For the most part, it's mainly just if you don't want it touching bottom, then use a bobber.
Bobber. Okay. I know you kind of touched on rods earlier. I'm just curious, like for somebody starting out or somebody new, I know a bunch of people like again, I go back to what I know, but like for hunting, big box retailers maybe not always have the best like bows, for example. Is there a place that they should go to look for rods? And like, are there brands that are better than others?
Academy Sports and Outdoors sells a lot of rods, a lot of different options. Whenever I started picking up different rods, I just go in there, find rods that were relatively cheap, buy them, use them. Usually they'd wear out because if you want to get gear that lasts, you have to spend a little bit of money on it. I've had some people ask me like, "Oh, why would you spend $400 on a rod and reel? That's absurd."
That's cheap.
Well,
yeah.
I'm like, well, that's planning on lasting me for a good while, probably about 10 years.
Yep. Yep. We see people in my industry listening to this podcast are like, yeah, that's cheap for gear. We're like, we get it. We know what paying the price tag.
That's something I don't give with my dad. He's like, why do you need so many rods? I'm like, ask yourself what you're saying right there. Ask yourself what you're saying, and then just think about that for a second.
How many guns do you have? Why do you need so many?
Pretty much.
I love this podcast
like,
so much.
He's like, why do you need 3 7-foot medium heavy rods? I'm like, why do you need 3 of the same exact ARs? Point proven. This is a weekly conversation.
Nuh-uh.
This is a weekly conversation.
I need a video.
It won't be too long until I can catch it again. So
that's awesome.
I'll be able to find another one here soon.
That's awesome. Okay, so going back to the right gear, right? So what are some good brand rods? And you talked a little bit about it, but can you mention some of like the better fishing lines that people should look at?
Well, as I've started to get more in depth about gear in this last 4 years, my favorite rods had to be Castaway Skeletons. These rods, they're sensitive. They're a little on the heavy side, but I'd rather have a little bit heavier of a rod than lose sensitivity. And they're strong. I've caught a lot of fish on them, and they sponsor our school.
Cool.
They're a really good rod company. Now on reels, I've had some bad experiences with bad reels. There's a few companies I can think of off the top of my head that I'm not going to say, but they just make an absolutely awful product. It's like I use it for about a year, which seems like a long time for the amount of use they get, but I'm on something that wants to last me as long as I want it to last. And there's been some reels that have just straight fallen apart on me. It's kind of sad.
Yep.
And even one of them, $200 reel, just died. I don't understand what happened to it. It just died. But Shimano reels, their product is uncanny to anything. They just last forever. I've got one back there that it's about a 4-year-old reel now, and it's about $100 reel, and it still compares better to the $200 reel that fell apart on me.
That's incredible. That's great.
And it's older than that reel. They just last. They just last forever.
Yeah, that's very cool.
You can put them through anything.
And it was neat that you said, like, I mean, they sponsor your school and your school team, which I want to get to in a minute, but you should also support the companies that are supporting your sport, your industry, right? Like those are the ones that you really should give back to. So I love that. That's important.
I've I had a shipping issue with them last year that it wasn't their fault. USPS, they love to send packages to the middle of nowhere and then say, "Oh, we've lost your package," and then it ends up showing up to your door in 3 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know. That rod that showed up in the package was in 3 pieces.
Oh,
It's this rod right here, and it's perfectly fine. It's just a testament to how strong the rods are. But I contacted them about it, and I said, basically, USPS lost the rod in mail. What do I do about it? They sent me a rod 100% free. It was the step up from the rod that I ordered.
oh.
So they didn't send me the rod I ordered. They sent me technically a better rod than what I ordered,
Yeah.
free of charge. They're just really nice people over there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's super important. It's really cool. I was going to ask, oh, do y'all have like a 4-H club that does fishing?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not too in depth in the 4-H, but I used to be, and I don't think we do.
Yeah.
I think it's mainly just shooting sports.
I always ask that. I mean, I didn't even have 4-H growing up, but I'm curious, is there any other that you know of, like entry point school for sure, school clubs for fishing, but like, is there any other organization or nonprofit or whatever that people can go and learn about fishing, especially like youth or people that know nothing?
Well, there's a website Kentucky has. It's called letsgofishing.com.
Okay.
Teaches basically all the small fundamentals of how to bait your hook, cast a line, all of that. And I think it even has listed, so I haven't been on the website, but I think it does have some listed spots you can go and fish, and it may have gear that links to gear you can get, but
yeah,
mainly the best thing is try to figure out a contact that you know, that someone that fishes, someone that is interested in fishing, meet up with them, talk about it, really try to find someone that's into it.
Mm-hmm.
I know a website can be helpful, but if you really want to know more about it, talk to someone you know that is really into fishing.
That's the hardest part, is most people don't have that person, and it's really something where, again, hunting, fishing, shooting, archery, it's all like, it's hard to do it out on your own. Like, it's very daunting. So unless you have like childhood grow up, or your parents, your grandparents, someone taught you or brought you along, right? So that's
it can be weird. Like fishing for me, bass fishing for me, like my family fishes, they bass fish some, but mainly just fish to eat fish.
Yep.
But bass fishing for me was kind of a weird step into things once it started. But after a while, I got to know some people. Instagram helped a lot with that. I made an account, I made a fishing account, posted a bunch of fishing pictures, and since then I met a bunch of people on it that really just been real nice people.
My favorite, I love that. My favorite is, and I do this myself, is the people that travel with their boat behind them in their truck, and they have their Instagram handle, and I always follow those people because my truck has an Instagram, but then I can find them, and it's always anglers. I've thought about putting mine on it, but like, I've already got a couple stickers on my truck. I'm not going to put some more on it. Come on. You got to put the Instagram handle. I may think about it. I don't want to be that kid they talk about in the parking lot. Oh, you see him? He's got an Instagram handle on his truck. Why is that there? So you don't know this about me, but my truck's name is Thad, like Thad Castle, if you ever watch that show. So Thad the Tacoma, and people know him. He has his own personality, but that's marketing, dude.
True.
The problem is, how well do you drive? Yeah.
Getting there. I say I've been driving since I was 11, 12. Technically, it started a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So that was the other thing, is I would get just one or two, but I would get like messages.
Basically, it's all been up and down my road and on a farm. And when it's on a farm, if you are about to hit something, you just swerve off into a cornfield. On the road, if you're about to hit something, you can't do that because you're either going to swerve into oncoming traffic or into a ditch.
I hope your dad listens to this episode.
Yeah, He probably will. It happened the other day. It was a little interesting.
Oh no. Oh no. Was he in the car?
It was, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and my mom and my brother. Yeah,
Okay.
I heard a lot about it, especially that night. I was told a couple of times to pull over.
Oh my gosh. Nah.
They're like, y'all just pull over. It'll be fine. You can drive a different time. I'm like, no, I'm driving. It'll be fine.
And that night, the entire Ray family ceased to exist.
It was definitely. I think I was the one that had the worst. I was the one most shooken up about that than
Sure.
anyone else.
Yeah, the adrenaline dump. Yeah. Yep.
It was
Sorry,
interesting.
I digress. I have to ask you this, and you probably can think of some off the top of your head. What are some like fishing lingo words that people wouldn't know, and what do they mean?
Well, for big bass, I've heard a lot of different words for them. Brute is one of them. Big bass can be a brute, can be a donkey, can be a toad. It's the amount of things that people call big bass is hilarious to me. I've got a friend that calls them swanch donkeys.
Ew.
I don't. Yeah, it's a little
Oh,
odd. It's his own thing.
sure. Okay. What else? What are some other words?
Pleasure boater, dumbass pleasure boater. That's another thing. Those are people that are on the lake for fun
Mm,
on a pontoon boat, and they always cut you off.
yes.
We had the first I remember the first tournament I ever fished. We were coming on this rock point, and it led out of a creek channel on this local lake near our house, and we're starting to pull up on this rock point. We're going not super fast, but fairly fast, and this pontoon boat pulls out of the creek channel and cuts us off right at the point. And I thought my boat captain was going to go crazy. He hates them.
Yeah. What is the etiquette for like lake or channels or all of that? Like I know hiking, it's the person coming up has kind of the right of way. Everybody else should step aside. So what does that look like? Kayakers, fishers, all that.
Usually, as I see it, for if you're on a big lake and you're a kayaker and there's a motorboat coming toward you, if I'm in the motorboat, I would usually slow down, not try to. I mean, if you get too big of a wave going toward a kayak, it's gonna flip the thing. So mainly just slowing down for them. And if you're going to a spot that's got somebody and you reach the spot and there's somebody on that stretch of bank, I usually just let them have it. I tend to not get too in depth in arguing over, oh, I was here first. Oh, well, I was 50 feet in front of you.
Sure. Yeah.
It just seems a little stupid to me. I know if I was in that boat and somebody cut me off of my bank, I wouldn't like it. So I just usually tend to stay behind them.
It's fair. It's fair. What do y'all call like newbie fishermen?
I have a word for them. Now, there's a certain group of people that would get mad at me for it because it's a brand of bait that usually all newer fishermen stick to, and they're like, "Oh, they're the best bait." I call them googans.
Googans.
They're
Okay.
all googans
I like that.
because they usually all throw the same brand of baits. They don't really know what they're doing. At one point, I was one.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
didn't know what I was doing.
Yep.
I've learned since then, but some people stick around in that phase longer than I think. I've got one friend that still hasn't gotten out of that phase. I'm trying to lean him in the right direction, but they're still most of them are just googans.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Any other words I'm missing or something that like people look at you funny?
Can't really think of any off the top of my head.
If
Yeah,
you do,
after this thing's over, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, I remember some now, but
worries. Okay, so yeah, let me know if you do think of any other ones. I was curious about like if you do or have you ever cast your own net to actually get live bait, or do you again not really use them?
I have before.
Okay.
Now, during the summer, it's been a few summers ago, but me and my neighbor, we'd go to a lake about an hour from our house and we'd jug fish for catfish,
Ooh.
basically using these big chlorine bottles, like shock bottles for a pool,
Yep.
and tying about 100-pound rope off to them and with a giant hook on them and just putting a big live bluegill on it. The biggest fish I've technically ever caught, even though it wasn't on a rod, is about a 45-pound blue catfish
Wow.
on a jug.
That's awesome.
But while we were out there one day, he taught me how to throw a cast net and over this big school of shad, and we caught probably 500 shad just in a big giant school in the middle of this creek channel.
Yep. One thing I can do, but for those that don't know, can you explain how to cast a net and do that properly?
And then I have used some smaller minnow traps before just to catch bluegill for catfish bait in a pond up the road from me. It's been a while since I've thrown a net out.
Okay. Okay. And what's the technique to that?
I wish I could tell you. Mainly, the people I've seen throw a cast net that are amazing at it, they do almost like they're a tornado and spin around a few times. I'll never understand it. I will never understand. I wish I could throw a cast net. That'd be really cool, but
Yep.
I just haven't been able to learn it yet.
Well, and the trick is to pull it as fast as possible too, as soon as it like hits the water, so it's not hitting the
Yeah.
ground too. Yeah, that's fun. I know you and I chatted about this before kind of the podcast, but can you explain like how you do more catch and release than anything?
About 99% of the fish I catch, they all swim back in the water for the most part unharmed. I feel bad whenever one just absolutely swallows a hook and it swims off kind of funny. I'm like,
Yeah.
that fish probably isn't going to make it. It makes me feel a little bad, but
Yeah.
whenever I'm trout fishing, I'll keep a couple here and there, not too often. Then whenever I walleye fish in the summer, I usually keep them because they taste really good and they repopulate fast, so I don't feel too bad about it. But for the most part, all the fish I catch, they all swim back. I do that so that I don't absolutely just murder a fishery. Like there's one pond that I've fished for about 4 years now that, in all honesty, I've probably caught every single fish in that pond. It's not too big, but it seems like I've caught one fish in there 3 times now.
Oh wow. How do you know?
Well, this one has a really funky looking tail. That's the only reason I've been able to tell which fish it is. It's got a little crick in its tail. It's this really weird spine displacement thing. But I've caught him off the same exact dock 3 times. The first time I didn't name him. The second time I did, and the third time I caught him, like, oh, you're a really stupid fish.
Oh, that made my whole day.
I don't know why he's bit 3 times, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Now, for the ones that you do catch, do you actually clean your own fish?
For trout, yes.
Okay.
All my trout I clean. Walleye, I'm not too good at filleting.
Mhm.
When I mean not too good, I mean absolutely butcher a walleye or a crappie for that matter. The one crappie I have cleaned, after that I said I'm gonna learn a little more about this before I try it again because I don't want to waste that much meat again.
Yeah.
But trout, they're really simple. All you gotta do is one slice down the stomach, and then gut the fish. Usually clean out the inside of it, and then after that you're ready to cook it. Skin.
Okay.
Even though it does sound kind of gross, I usually keep the head on all my trout that I cook.
That's weird.
It just comes off. It's not that bad.
Interesting. Okay, so clean fish. What fillet knives, or do you just need the one fillet knife to like do that?
I usually just use one fillet knife. I've even used a pocket knife before to clean a trout. cleaning a trout doesn't take a certain kind of knife, really.
Yeah.
For other fish, you do need more specific knives.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because some meat's different than other meat. You could tear some of it, and you have to get the skin off most fish, even
Yeah.
if you want to fillet them right.
Okay, that makes sense. For the catch and release too, and picking out the ones that you eat, like how do you know, is there a size or a weight limit that they have to be for you to be like mandatory throw them back or keep?
It. I've never heard of a weight limit for freshwater fish.
Okay.
Now, size limit, like length in inches, usually at the boat ramps in most lakes, there will be like a board. There'll be like a small board near the ramp that tells limit sizes and everything. If there's not, you got to look up online that certain name of the lake, fish regulations, and then size limit, how many you can keep. There's a daily limit per person, and then there's also a creel limit. And I think that's the amount that you can keep legally in your freezer at one time. Like I know crappie, at least in Kentucky, it's a 20 per day per person.
Wow.
And then 40 per creel. I think that's. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure what the creel is because I don't catch and keep fish as much. But I know daily limits, and then the size limits are the important thing you need to keep attention to. Like it'll change depending on lake. For bass fishing, I know there's a bunch of lakes around here that have different size limits. For largemouth mainly, it stays around that 15-inch mark.
Okay.
Small, usually 15 inches. Now, there's a couple lakes here in Kentucky that have really weird and wacky smallmouth lengths. Like the one I'm going to this weekend, Lake Cumberland, you can only keep smallmouth over 18 inches long.
Wow.
Which, for a smallmouth, that's pretty big.
Yep.
So it makes it a little more challenging trying to catch and keep and weigh in a smallmouth in a tournament. And then at Dale Hollow, they have what's called a slot limit. So that slot limit, you can only keep fish under 16 inches and below. You can't keep any from 15 inches or 16 inches to 20 inches. And then you can keep one over 21 inches, which I've yet to see a 21-inch smallmouth in my life, and I would love to. I need to figure out how to catch one.
That's a lot of information, yeah. So it's a lot. Like I feel like fishing is a barrier to entry when you have to figure all of this out for wherever you're going across country.
There's a lot of research and information that needs to be put into it that a lot of people just don't understand.
Yeah, 100%.
I know one of my friends, he gets asked all the time, like, "Oh, can you weigh in catfish in these tournaments?" Like, no, it's why it's called a bass tournament. he's gone he's gone on and on to people in his class about tournaments because no one understands it.
Oy vey, that's funny though. It's kind of like when we have Glock matches, and it's like, oh, can I shoot my HK in a Glock match? No,
that's why it's called a Glock match.
I can't.
It's in the name.
So
I don't understand if it's not in the name, but it's in the name.
No. I'm gonna keep you off track. Okay. So you're also, which I didn't know this until today, actually, you're on your school's, is it angling team, fishing team? What is it?
Fishing team.
Okay, fishing team.
It's our school's fishing team. A lot of people, they didn't even know we had a school fishing team until this year because we didn't. At first, it was a club for the first few years, and then this year, it now just switched to a fishing team. Now, we're actually a sanctioned school sport. It's grown in the last year. We've lost some people because they've graduated and all that, but as a sport, I think we're getting up there now.
That's so cool. So how does go ahead.
I've been on it this is my second year now.
Okay. How does that work? Like, do you have a number of people that make the team and there's a club? How do you get sponsors? Like, tell me about this.
there's no there's no qualifications, there's no tryouts for the team. All you got to do is just sign up for the club and you're in. Now there is a little bit of decisions that need to be made on who has the boat, who wants to partner with that person, who's going to be the boat captain, because you need 3 people in the boat to even go out there and fish a tournament. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just signing up for the team and being a part of the team.
Yeah.
It can be a little troubling trying to find a partner and trying to find a partner that works well with you, but I've been thankful for the last 2 years. I've found partners that have been really good people.
This is awesome. This is so cool. Now, every weekend you guys are competing or practicing, or what do you do?
Not every weekend. We have, technically, we only need to fish 3 tournaments this year.
Okay.
For technical, but we have qualifiers for the state tournament. The state tournament's usually in the spring, or actually always in the spring. No, regionals is in the spring, states in the summer. You need to fish a certain amount of tournaments that our coaches laid out to fish or to be able to qualify to fish in the spring for regionals. And apart from that, everything else is up to you. We're thankful here that we have a lot of different associations that run tournaments and a bunch of different tournament trails. And my boat captain, he signs us up for all these different tournament trails. And back in October and September, I think we went, let's say, 5 weekends in a row.
Wow.
It was tournament, practice, and then tournament.
That's cool.
The last 3 times we went for the practice tournament, that was a little rough, but it still turned out okay.
Yeah. Now, do y'all have like a team president or club president? Like, how do you do practices?
We actually don't practice.
Okay.
Technically, they can't make us practice because that's taking time out of the boat captain, money out of the boat captain, because boat captain's got to trailer the boat to the lake, pay for gas, tow us around all day. They can't even fish.
Oh.
They just have to. Bless all of them. Bless every single high school fishing boat captain, because I don't see how you all have the patience to sit there and just watch 2 bozos fish on a boat for 8 hours straight. I don't understand how you all have the patience for it.
They're doing God's work. It's not just bozos, little teenagers that are pain in the butt.
I don't. Bless all of them.
That's awesome. Well, they want to pass it down. You think about it, though. Those are the people that want to give back. They want to pass it down. They want people out on the water. And it's probably more fun for them than you think, but I do agree. Like, I can't sit.
Probably.
Yeah.
I know if it was me and it was my kid, they were out there fishing, I'd be happy. Now, if it was raining and 30 degrees and just miserable and nothing's biting, I could see where that could be a little bit strenuous, but I'd still make the best of it.
Yeah, for sure. And then
we've got a handful of sponsors. Castaway Rods, as I mentioned earlier, they sponsor our team. Land Big Fish is another one of them. They're a tackle shop company. Renegade Marine, they're a tackle shop fairly close to our school that reached out to us. I think they paid for our jerseys last year. I'm not positive about that, but and then there's a few other smaller companies here and there that reached out and sponsored. They all end up somewhere along the jersey.
So you and your dad, y'all compete for how many logos you have?
No, not necessarily. Because I do have a Samson jersey. I just don't wear it much.
It's fun to learn the team dynamic between here. Okay, so you're an aspiring, though, pro angler. So you want to do that after graduation or college or what?
It's a little hairy there.
Okay.
If the opportunity presented itself, absolutely. No doubt in my mind I would go for it. But as of right now, out high school and planning on going to trade school and becoming an electrician.
Very cool.
Everything planned out. I ended up fishing college level and then fishing pro level.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
But how many sacrifices have you made
But it's awesome.
to do what you love?
I don't see how my family puts up with me. It's constantly every single weekend. Hey, can I go fish? And usually the place I go most of the time, it's like half an hour. Well, yeah, about half an hour from my house. And I don't see how my mom, my dad, my grandma puts up with it. But usually I go down there, fish for anywhere from 2 hours to one day. I think I was down there 10 hours straight. That was a long day, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, I get it. Absolutely. How does someone though become pro? Like, how does that work out? Do you know?
I'd love to know, but I think mainly starting younger, the better you're off, because you start learning people in the sport, you start learning names. If you fish in college, fish for college teams, and you do good there, I think you can sometimes pick up somewhere along there and get more momentum building up into pro level.
Yeah.
There's pro level opener tournaments too, like actual open tournaments you can sign up for, and you don't have to be a pro yet. Some people emerge from that.
That's cool. Okay.
It'd be interesting to hear some of the pro stories of how they got there.
And you don't know a lot of them, or you haven't heard of them.
I've met a couple of them.
Okay.
I have met a couple of them, but
did you ask?
Not too many. No, it was more of because it was at ICAST fishing convention this summer, and it was more of, hey, I'm a really big fan. Can I get a picture? And then, yeah, sure. And then I was into it. I wish I'd stick around and talk a little more with them, but I wasn't thinking at the time.
No, it's fangirl. I get it. Same with us. Again, SHOT Show. It's like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh, I probably could have had a longer conversation.
I don't know if you know him, but I met Kevin Van Dam. I'm like, oh my gosh. I see this guy on TV all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I waited. What's funny is he was doing an interview with, now it was for his tackle box sponsor company. And I was waiting there behind him out of the frame for probably a good 20 minutes, just waiting to talk to him.
Oh.
And once I got up there to talk to him, there was another guy that came in to talk to him. And I'm like, dude, I've been waiting here for about 20 minutes. Can you please just move that way? I think I was probably at that booth for half an hour before I finally got to talk to him. I got a picture with him.
Yeah.
But it took a second.
But was it worth it?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it was. Apart from me having the dorkiest looking haircut, because I decided to get a haircut right before we went on the trip. I kind of regret that, but it was okay. I still have the picture.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So who else are some like pro wranglers that you follow, or pro anglers, sorry, that you follow on social media, or, just their story online or on TV?
Jacob Wheeler is a big one. He's in the pro arena. He's really young. He's like 20 something young, and he's made more of a name for himself in the last few years than any of them.
Cool.
It's been neat watching him become the angler he is now. Like, whenever I started being on social media and start developing myself fishing with all the fishing, and I mean, he was kind of a big name, but not super big. In the last couple of years, it's just he's taken off.
It's cool. Yeah. Are there any like females? I'm just curious, like really good female anglers out there?
I know of one. Her name's Christine Fisher. She kayak tournaments. She fishes a lot of kayak tournaments. A ton of them.
Mhm.
and she's a really good female angler. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of them in the pro circuit right now.
That's normal.
Maybe it'll, yeah, maybe it'll change eventually.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So talk about these competitions. So how are they divvied up? I keep hearing you say kayak competition, bass, obviously tournament. That dude needs to learn that. What are some other competitions?
Well, there's kayak tournaments for bass fishing,
Mhm.
and there's normal boat tournaments for bass fishing.
Okay.
There's also muskie tournaments. The people that die hard muskie fish, I think all of you are crazily dedicated because
What is
I
that?
don't. Muskie are these giant toothy fish. I've hooked one of them in my life. It was about 45 inches long, according to my uncle, because
Oh, wow.
he was the one that got it in the net, and then both of us managed to get it out of the net and back into the river without getting a picture of it.
Mhm.
But they are big, long, toothy fish, and they are really hard to get to bite. But once you get them to bite, they fight
Okay.
hard.
So it's another fun one then, maybe ish.
Yeah, crappie fish. There's also crappie tournaments. Those I could see as being a lot of fun. Though I'm not. I think actually in crappie tournaments you can keep your catch. Like I know in bass tournaments, the majority of people don't keep any of their fish.
Okay.
They let them swim back.
Yeah.
Just rule of thumb.
Yeah.
But crappie tournaments, I think you can keep some of your fish.
Okay.
And then there's catfish tournaments as well. Really, about any sport fish that you can think of, there's a tournament for it.
Pretty
I
cool.
know up north they do. I know that up north they do a lot of walleye tournaments. I don't think there's any trout tournaments.
Okay.
I think it's more of a fly fishing and serene wilderness type of fishing instead of actual tournaments.
So have you
Yes,
Okay.
and I will say it is a pain in the butt.
Okay.
I have I've caught a fair amount of fish on a fly rod for the amount of time I've put into it, but for the main part, I just stick to conventional because it's easier. It's easier for me to do.
Yeah.
I don't have to think too highly in depth for it, and I also don't have to learn a new style of fishing.
Yeah. Now, can you give me an overview though? Like I do want to try it one day. Like what is fly fishing and how do you fly fish? Or do you have like basics?
I've got a fly rod over here.
So first they have their own rod and then you tie their own flies.
Yes,
Okay.
the people that tie their own flies are dedicated. They're not really looking to more of catch fish. Fishing for them is more of on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to a few fly fishermen, and they're like, I fly fish for the spiritual aspect of it, and I've never really gotten that. But you do need a certain kind of rod for it. Usually, I'm no expert fly fisherman, but the longer the rod, the easier it is to cast. You usually strip out line, the line floats, and you whip it back and forth in the air. And once you finally let it go, all that line throws forward, and your fly is at the very end of your tippet, which is another line you attach to your fly line. It's a long process. I will never truly understand, but would love to get into it more.
I don't think never say never. I think you'd figure it out or you'd find someone that knows how to.
I think eventually if I get bored of what I'm doing now, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, never say never though. You're too young to say that.
Yeah.
So like what competitions right now are you wanting to compete in or what are your favorite? What are you trying to go for?
Right now, my main goal for this year and for this season is regionals in April, and then after that, state tournament in June. I think it's June.
Mhm.
I'm not positive, but those are the big two.
Okay.
Those are the actual KHSAA school sanctioned full tournament events.
Okay.
Like those are, if you want to fish one, that's the one you want to fish. That's the one you want to be in.
Okay.
Most of your exposure is going to come from that. If you win that, you're basically golden.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I was going to ask you about that. Okay, yeah, I was going to remember. How?
And after,
oh, go ahead.
After you win state, like say you win state, you get to move on to nationals.
Okay.
And that is the biggest tournament in all the United States for bass fishing. Like for high school bass fishing, nationals is the big goal.
Okay.
Like state and regionals, you can get to them.
Mm-hmm.
It still takes skill.
Yeah.
But to get to nationals, it's a push.
Okay, so
it's a big push.
How does someone win state? Like, I know nothing, right? So is it how many inches per fish, a ton of fish? Like, how do you win? And then how do you get up to pounds? Okay.
So for points, you can collect points. So for the amount of tournaments you place, the higher you place, the more points you get.
Mm-hmm.
And for those points add up over and over. And if you get a certain amount of points, then you're eligible to fish regionals. So,
but hold on, the pounds though, I still don't understand. So you're saying like you have like 5 hours to fish, and then it's as many fish as you get weighed, added up?
For every tournament that we do, it's either best or best three. Usually, for high school, it's never best three. Now, for some adult tournaments around our area, it's best three fish. But so usually for our tournaments, you get 8 hours to fish.
Okay.
In those 8 hours, you can keep your best biggest bass, weigh them if they're legal size,
mm-hmm.
weigh them in, and whoever has the most poundage for those 5 bass wins the tournament.
And then they get the points.
Then it goes second, third, fourth. Yeah, and then they get points.
Okay.
I think each tournament for our qualifiers, each one of our tournaments is worth 300 points if you win it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes 299, 298, down, so on and so on.
Okay.
And the more points you gather up, the higher you place, the better you're going to have a chance to getting into regionals and then state and eventually getting into nationals.
Have you been in nationals yet?
Not yet. Last year we didn't make it nationals. I guess this year, but in spring, it was in South Carolina, and we didn't place high enough to make it. But that's really the goal. That's the goal for this year.
Yeah.
The goal this year is to get to nationals.
Cool.
Or at least get to state. At the very least. 3 people, 2 fishermen,
and the captain.
And the other person is the captain. The captain can't. There's some tournaments the captain can't fish.
Mm-hmm.
There's some tournaments the captain can't even be on the front of the deck.
Okay.
Almost all tournaments the captain can't fish.
He's just like a neutral.
He's there. He or she's there to pilot the boat, give tips, and just make sure everything's safe.
Okay.
But usually it's only 3 people with a boat. Now, there's some tournaments that you can have one fisherman, say I'm sick, but my partner, we have a tournament this weekend, and say I'm sick, we have a tournament this weekend. My partner, technically, if he could find another person to be in the boat with him that's not a fisherman, that's not going to fish, then he could fish that tournament because there's 3 people in the boat, 2 spectators and 1 fisherman.
Okay, that's fair. Now, I'm curious, like, is there a governing body or rule set over these tournaments? I don't know anything about this world.
Now on the water, there's no rules. Like, there's rules.
There's still rules. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no technical enforcement of those rules.
Okay.
If you get away with something, then you're just a bad person. But you got away with it. No one technically can stop you because no one saw you do it. Now, if someone catches you doing something bad, or doing something wrong, then they can report you and you can be disqualified.
Yeah.
That's happened a couple times. There's at state tournament there was a few people speeding and they got DQ'd.
Yeah.
Like going 60 miles an hour down the lake, which
What?
in a high school tournament, that's not, you can't do that.
You don't need to be doing that anyways in any lake, I would think.
One of my friends has gotten his boat up to 73.
Oh, I can't comment on that. Y'all are too young.
The time I was in the boat with him and he got it up to 68, I was like, we need to slow down. we need to slow down now.
Yeah. Okay, so there are rules. Now, where would someone go to sign up? Like what website someone registering as like a pro or amateur or team or whatever into a tournament?
I don't know about more pro level. I know high school level.
Yeah.
SAF, or at least around Student Angler Federation.
Okay.
SAF website. Pay your dues on there. Sign up. You can fish any of the SAF tournaments. I don't know about other states, but I know Kentucky. Sign up for SAF. Pay your dues. You can fish any of the SAF tournaments even if you're not in a school. You don't have to be technically associated with a school. I've heard some names for schools be called out. They're like random. Schools don't even exist. It's just someone filled out something to fill that spot out.
Yeah.
But just pay your dues for SAF, fish tournaments. You can technically make it to regionals and state and then nationals even if you're not a part of a school team.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
So usually, and most clubs have a membership due part. Most bass clubs have a membership due thing. You just sign up on that membership part and then you fish all their tournaments.
That's pretty cool. Now, I know we talked about it in the beginning of the podcast, like gear, tools, all of that. When you're on a boat, however, do you have a live well to keep these in? So you're swapping out the bigger fish. Okay. What else do you need on that too? Like, do you have the anchor and what are the cool poles that automatically keep your boat?
Power poles.
Yeah, those are cool.
Those, legit. For our lakes around here, we don't really need them now. Sure. I know one of my friends would disagree with me because he fishes dirt, shallow water, but most of our lakes lean on the deep side, so we don't really need power poles. But there's trolling motor anchors you can use that it's called spot lock. So if you set the mechanism on the trolling motor, it'll keep your boat in one spot. Okay. That we don't use actual anchors that you throw over the side of the boat.
Yeah, no.
Those are kind of saved out of the way, but for the most part, we just stay moving.
Yeah.
You don't, unless you really are on fish in one particular spot.
Yeah.
You usually just stay moving.
Yeah, that makes sense. Trying to think of what else. I mean, obviously a measuring stick or a weight or poundage.
Yeah. No, you need a bump board. So it's a little metal or plastic board that's got one side going up and then the length of the fish on the side.
Yeah.
And you just touch the nose of the fish up to the board and it tells you the length of it. It's basically a measuring tape, like a metal measuring tape.
Okay.
Make sure your fish are of legal size. And another thing you need, you don't technically need them, but one thing that helps a lot are cull tags. Now, you can get bad cull tags and you can get good cull tags. The bad ones that I absolutely hate using have like a little loop that you stick through the fish's gill, like underneath their gill, and then clip it, and it leaves a little piece of string up above it with a little ball attached to it. Mm-hmm. That helps with being able to determine which, like if you can remember which fish is your smallest fish, then you can pull that one out quicker because it's got a certain colored bubble on the end of it.
That's pretty cool.
I don't like using those cull tags as much because I tend to see it hurts more of the fish because they're stuck. It's underneath their gill rakers and I
So
just
they breathe. Yeah.
I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like it. But
Yeah.
the good cold tags that I've seen that really help preserve the fish, they're like they're kind of like these pliers.
Okay.
There's just a little bit of plastic up here and a little bit of plastic down here, and that plastic, there's a little ball that you can cinch over top of it. That once you put it, so you put it in the fish's lip like that, and then you cinch the plastic down. It doesn't. It was a weird demonstration, but once you cinch it down, the little plastic can't go anywhere.
Okay, so you're not a guy or girl, but like, have you seen the ear cuffs? It's the same thing. You put a piece of metal in your ear and you squeeze it so it stays on.
Basically the same thing.
You ear cuff the fish, and I have to tell a story. Sorry, you're 16, but I was literally minding my own business at Barnes and Noble. This is years ago, and this guy sits down and like flops over his arm, and he's like, "Do you know what this is?" And it was literally his bass ruler tattooed on his arm, and I'm like, "No." I was like, "That's when you have a problem. It's when you've tattooed a ruler."
Yeah. Yeah. That I've had a couple of my friends are like, "Oh, if you ever get a tattoo, you should get a ruler on your leg." I'm like, "You're insane to think I would tattoo a ruler on me." My gosh. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not putting a ruler on my leg.
Okay. Props to your dad. He raised a very smart kid. So good job. This is funny. Okay. A couple more questions I had. You mentioned it earlier, but I want you to, if you can remember any off the top of your head, what YouTube channels or what books or what podcasts can help someone learn about fishing or even becoming like a pro angler?
I don't listen to many podcasts.
Not yet.
But
you have a new one now.
Yeah, no kidding. But Bassmaster magazine tips, I've got a stack of them back there behind me.
Mm-hmm.
There's tips on how to fish different lakes in there. There's different baits, different advice from pros on how to tackle some certain kind of structure and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched a lot of YouTube in learning how to do all this. A few of the channels, Tactical Bassin, they pretty much have every single thing you need to know about bass fishing. And anything you could ever dream of, they have a video about it.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot from them. Learned a lot from a guy by the name of Milliken Phishing. He makes a lot of videos. He lives in Texas now, but he used to live in Nebraska. And he has a lot of videos, and he's funny. That's a plus.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of videos on different tactics, and a lot of the pros now, like pros that you see on TV, they have YouTube channels.
Okay.
They're starting to transition over to that as well.
Yeah,
so I watch some of their videos sometimes.
Do like Outdoor Channel, even though that you have to pay for Outdoor Channel, right? Like the shows on there. Yeah. Do they live stream any of these tournaments?
There's a few that they live stream. I've seen some tournaments that they live stream. I know the big ones, they live stream them. Like I don't watch a ton of TV, but
I'm just curious.
I think they live stream the Bassmaster Classic, which is like the epitome of all tournaments ever.
Yeah.
They live stream that one. Most of them are just recordings. Mm-hmm. A lot of them.
Can you go attend one of these tournaments and just watch and like meet people? And are they open to spectators?
Yeah. A lot of the pro tournaments are open to spectators. Like they'll actually encourage you coming out and watching them weigh in and seeing all of it go down. And I know high school tournaments, they do the same with us. I've been to a few where the locals just come down to the boat ramp and watch us weigh in. They don't really. It's all in fun.
Yeah.
They all just come in and watch us weigh in.
That's really cool. It's really cool. And now, is there money in the sport at the high school level?
Not at the high school level.
Yeah, I know there is at the bigger. I know the 1 million just happened or whatever. And I'm like, It's a lot.
That was huge.
My friends were in that
That
competition.
thing was huge. That was crazy.
Yeah.
But high school level, most of the time we just have trophies.
Mhm.
I know there's one tournament trail around here that gives out a rod to first place winner.
Yeah.
And then scholarship money has also been on the line before.
Yeah.
That's the only money related thing that's actually been able to.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can give a bunch of high schoolers $100 in cash for winning a tournament.
No.
I don't think that'll go over good, but
Yeah.
I know trophies mainly, rods, and then scholarship money also.
Yeah, that's neat. Okay. Yeah, again, Florida State is where I went to school, and they actually had a bass fishing team, and they had a boat, and we had the reservation, which is we had like its own lake and property where people could do a lot of water sports. We had a wakeboard team. There was a lot, like there, but not every university has the programs, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that's the hard part.
not everywhere has it. What's good about where I live and around here in Kentucky, about every single high school that we have has a bass fishing team. It's surprising how many of them have it.
That's
And
cool.
as my school district is wanting to grow our bass fishing team to different schools in our district, we're looking at adding 2 more teams. So it's growing.
Yeah, I love that.
Even though not a ton of people understand why we want to wake up at 3 in the morning to head to a lake and may not have a chance of catching anything all day. It's a growing sport.
People listening to this podcast, we're your people. We wake up at 4 a.m. to hunt. We wake up at 5 a.m. to shoot 3-gun. Like, we get it. The other people, they have to learn to wake up early.
I've texted back some of my friends when I wake up, and then when they wake up at like 8.
Yeah.
And they're like, why were you up at 4 in the morning? I'm like,
Yeah.
I've been up for 4 hours. I've already caught 10 fish.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Wake up.
I love it. And is y'all's time to fish? Is it before sunrise, like a couple minutes or 30 minutes before sunrise? Or what's the legal fishing time?
No. Well, technically there's no legal fishing time now for tournaments.
Yeah.
We have to release at safe light. We had to make sure there's enough light to be able to see where we're going. Now, there are bass fishing night tournaments.
That's cool.
Those aren't high school level. Those are more of just a adult and over, like bigger tournaments.
Yeah.
But I fished a night tournament this summer that it went from I think like 6, which is still light outside, to 10 or 11.
That's cool.
But you're fishing into the night, so there's really no limit to it. Now there's some that you fish from 6 at night to 6 in the morning, 12 hours straight. I would die.
Call that a power hour. No.
That's
just wait.
I don't drink older. I don't drink many energy drinks, but that is a grab a bang and hit the water and hope you stay awake.
That sounds fun though.
Fun to try once.
Yeah, you need to do it at least once. Just see if you can make it.
Knowing my luck, I would fall asleep while I'm standing up and fall into the water.
You might be the oldest 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Yep.
A few of my friends have called me an old man. They're like, your back always hurts. I'm like, yeah, because my backpack that I carry around the field with all my tackle boxes in it weighs like 30 pounds.
Yeah. Yep. Oh man. Well, Thomas, are there any final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with, whether it's the newbies, which we Googans.
Yeah.
See, full circle.
Yeah.
Or anybody else that wants to, go and do it on their high school team or go into college and find a bass team or what have you.
Really, anything I'd just like to say to anybody looking to get into the sport, just start somewhere. Start with something. Try new things. Don't be afraid to look a little crazy while doing it. I know some of the weirder techniques I've done have actually turned out to be pretty well successful. Like one time during the summer, me and my papa went out to one of my favorite bodies of water ever, and I was throwing around that thing, which compared to my hands is like 6.5 I think it's like 6 inches long. And he looked at me, he's like, I've been alive for 60 some years. I've never seen a bait that big. I'm like, okay, well, to make it even better, I'm going to catch a fish on it. And he goes, you can try. And that day I ended up out fishing him, and I caught a giant bass on that bait.
That's awesome.
Just don't be afraid to try anything. There's a lot of room to learn. Even though I've been doing it for 4 years and I've learned a lot, there's so much more that I need to figure out. There's so many different techniques that you can do. It's a never ending learning process.
Yeah.
Everybody does something differently, and the more people you expose yourself to and fish with, the more stuff you learn.
I am blown away the fact that you know that it's 16 years old, the fact that you want to be a lifelong learner, the fact that you think that everybody can teach you something, which they can. Like, I'm the same way. Thoroughly, I'm impressed. So that's for you to realize that at 16, you're going to be well off by the time you're 20, 21, 25, Awesome. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Oh, and how could people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at the OK Angler. That's about it. I kind of don't want people finding my Facebook.
No, I like Instagram.
That's more of family stuff.
Yeah.
But I am on Instagram.
I love it. One day you should do like a public Facebook page though for your fishing,
I may end up making one.
Heck yeah. Cool. Well, Thomas, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Good luck with everything. And I'm excited
Thanks
to
for
see
having me.
you. Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
I'm ready to see you 5 years from now. We'll have another one of these and you'll tell me how you made it.
Thanks for listening to the Reticle Up Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow along on social media at Reticle Up or 3 Gun Kenzie.